Hello again, fellow homesteaders. Now it's time to take a look at how our dyes look. They all sat overnight. They're still a little damp and some dyes coming off of them. Still, that's why I have the very pretty and lightly scented trash bag here. I've taken them through water about 3 times, cold water and then hot water, to show the natural fading that would occur if you were laundering them. Which, of course, if you're going to use these on canvas for an art project or something like that, you wouldn't have quite that degree of fading, but you still need to rinse them thoroughly to let the dye drain. I didn't use a ton of plant matter, and it takes a ton to make a deep, rich color with most plant, vegetable, or fruit species. I had the best luck with fruit in this test. I only used a cup or less of everything. If I was going to make a whole shirt or an outfit or some big hanging wall display, I would use multiple cups. The different mordants you can use can alter the colors a little bit too. That you'll read more about in the article. This slightly bluish shade here was from the ironweed. You can see, hopefully the light's good enough here, that you can see there's a slight blue cast to it. Not much, but somewhat. And here is a strip of what my test material looked like before it was dyed. I opted to go with just one strip of the exact same material to make it a better test for comparison. This almost looks like you tea or coffee stained it, which is also a fun way to get color naturally. This was the Joe Pye weed, which is dripping everywhere. So it definitely darkened up my canvas significantly, but from the pretty pinkish to purple flowers on there, that is not what I envisioned that color turning out like. And these were the tomatoes. It gives you a bluish green. It's a little bit of a brownish cast to it. It was first, when I did the tomatoes, they were this bluish green, which I was told they would be. And as they simmered more, it looked like a muddled brown, something like the Joe Pye was going to turn out. And then in the end, they gave me more of a pretty blue cast than I got from the ironweed. So that's what I got with my tomato plants, which we have more of those left. I made good use of the plants I could not use. This little patch here, I believe, turned out the best. I used some of the wild black raspberries we'd picked. There were a few red ones in it. We're about to the end of berry season, and it's still dripping a good bit. They all are. But it gave me a nice purple hue. Again, with natural dyes, you're going to get much more of a muted shade than you would with a commercial dye like RIT, or even using food coloring or Kool-Aid. We use food coloring and Kool-Aid in a lot of the wool dyeing we did. You can click on over to that article to see how we did that. And some spices. Paprika, I think, is my favorite so far. This one's really dripping. This was how the tomatoes turned out. Tomatoes are technically a fruit that grow on a vine. So I think I had the best luck for the deepest, most true colors with the fruits there. Oh, except maybe this here is grapes. No clue. They were commercially purchased. I just had a few that were starting to go bad that got left in the back of the refrigerator. So it did dye them, and I didn't use very many because I gave the rest as a treat to my flock. So I probably had half a cup of grapes. I'm not sure if I would have used more, if I would have gotten a different shade. And I also did this one in the microwave. So there can be some difference there, but as far as not developing a true tone, the tomatoes I did in the microwave as well. And I did the berries in the microwave. So I'm not sure if the heat through method had anything to do with the coloring with the grapes, because the other two colors came out true. And this is what I got from my onion skins, which isn't much of a change difference, but it's somewhat. If you wanted to tea stain something, it will look similar to this. This is very similar to how the Joe Pye came out, but just lighter. And it could give you a nice flesh tone if you're doing some doll making, or just want something a little bit darker and more rustic looking if you're doing a pillow and some embroidery work. But you could take something like this with a canvas, or just white cotton or white linen, something that's natural. The plain color is going to be a lot cheaper to buy, and then do your own dyeing on it and use some fabric paints or the dyes as paints to do decorations, hand embroider, machine embroider, beadwork. You could make some beautiful homemade gifts, some things that would be heirloom gifts from what you're growing on your homestead, from what you're foraging, and just a little bit of your own talented handiwork. So this is how all of our dyes turned out. I think that with spices you get a lot deeper hue, but I cannot complain about how neat the tomatoes turned out. And I'll keep these swatches, And I think I'll throw them in the wash alone a few times and see how the fading goes. Like I said, I ran them through cold water, I believe 3 times, and then hot water, so they weren't just coming straight out of the stain and giving you a false impression of how deep the dyes were. I do really like how the tomatoes turned out. And to some degree, the ironweed, I thought they would have a lot more color with a hint of periwinkle or indigo in them, but if I would have used more, picking those little flowers off the ironweed just took forever. But you can find on our color guide here in the article, it'll tell you what colors are supposed to come from certain plants and vegetables and tree bark and leaves. You have oak leaves growing on your homestead. They make a beautiful shading too. So go out and explore and experiment, and please add to our comment section things you've used that we might have forgotten on our color guide, or some difference in shadings you've come up with by mixing different natural matter or different amounts to get different shades than what I did. And by all means, please hop on our social media and share pictures of what you create. We would love to see it.